Hello there, podcast listeners. Thank you for finding JJ Meets World. You are in for a real treat this week. We flip part of the script here, and Tucker Lucas is my guest. He's usually my producer, but we're going to touch on everything from Happy Joe's Taco Pizza, whether or not going to a school where his dad was a teacher was easy, and how much he dislikes the movie Lady in the Water. All of this and more on this week's episode of JJ Meets World. Donate to our Patreon.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is! He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
Flipping the script today, Tucker Lucas, my producer, is now my guest. So when you comment on things in this, just so you know, you're going to have to say, are you commenting as the producer or are you commenting as yourself, Tucker Lucas? So, hello, Tucker.
Hello, this is producer Tucker talking.
Well, I think it should be producer, hello, this is Tucker.
Oh.
Guest, it's good to be here.
It's more like, oh, producer Tucker's not here right now. You're talking to guest Tucker.
Could you just have two different voices? Could you pitch up your voice when you're the guest and then maybe bring it down?
Are you asking me to ask questions of myself as though I'm two different people?
Well, I mean, that might happen, right?
I think we're going to just let the situation be fluid and not worry about whatever label you'd like to ascribe to me right now.
Fluid.
JJ.
Great way to bring this up. You're a big fan of Bruce Lee.
Yes.
And do you remember watching an interview segment with me a bunch of times when we lived together about Bruce Lee?
Was I replaying it for you?
Yeah.
Why was I replaying it for you?
Because you really loved what his metaphor was.
It was basically be like water.
Yeah.
It can flow or it can crash. Yeah, and I couldn't tell you whether or not. I highly doubt that Bruce Lee was the first person to come up with that.
Do you remember his example of why, one of the reasons
pour water
he loved...
into a cup, it becomes the cup. You pour water into a teapot, it becomes the teapot.
Yes.
Yeah, I do remember that.
So Tucker and I lived together for, about a year?
Was it that long?
I think it was almost, right?
I don't know if we made it a year.
I feel like it was. I feel like I moved in the winter and I moved out in the winter.
I'm not sure. We'll have to look at our old Zanga posts and see what we were saying at the time.
One of the best nights of my life, Tucker and I were watching the movie Pulp Fiction. The DVD of Pulp Fiction had just come out. That's how dated this story is. The first DVD version of Pulp Fiction had just come out, and we decided to watch it. Now, we were living in a house that Tucker's dad owned, but he had gone down to Florida for what turned out to be a failed experiment in keeping a marriage together.
Yep.
And he had two couches in his living room. One couch that faced a television on one end of the room. Another couch that faced a fireplace at the other end of the room.
Comfy, overstuffed couches.
So we took the couches and twisted them so both couches were facing the television. It was a good double couch situation.
Sort of a V shape.
And Tucker said, gosh, I'd really like taco pizza for dinner. And I said, just not feeling taco pizza. I think I'd like some Dwayne's House of Pizza. Neither of us could agree.
Yeah.
And we were not going to cave either.
Yeah, it was not only did I want taco, but I wanted it from Happy Joe's.
Right, a very specific taco
yes,
pizza.
We knew we couldn't get both of our choices from the same place.
Also, this is important for the story. This is in North Fargo, 3rd Street and what?
Right next to Horseman, so between 12th and 11th Avenue.
Okay. So we both order at the same time from different pizza places. Tucker orders from Happy Joe's, which had a North Fargo location just up there near the Shack on Broadway.
Yep.
And I ordered from Dwayne's House of Pizza on South University Drive, 17th Avenue South. So Happy Joe's much closer, but we made a little bet. Whichever one got there first, that person would get an extra $3 tip on top of it.
Yeah. I guess now that you say it like that, really, neither of us got punished. It was only the delivery person.
Right.
The loser got punished.
And we also didn't tell them. We didn't say like, "Hey, listen, we're pitting your pizza place against another one."
Did the loser have to pay the tip for the other person?
Oh, yeah.
It was something like that.
So, for example, if Happy Joe's had gotten there first, I would have given you an additional $3.
That's
to
right.
Add to the tip of your driver. So we're both there waiting, and about an hour goes by, and I think, oh, there's no way Happy Joe's is not going to win this. They're probably on their way right now. Well, sure enough, Dwayne's House of Pizza walks up to the front door, and I win. And as I'm paying the gentleman with the extra $3, and I'm explaining to him, you get an extra $3 because you beat Happy Joe's, Happy Joe's pulls up.
Yep.
And I see them look at the bag and the address and look back up and see another delivery driver in the doorway. And so then he walks up, and I made sure to say, "Oh, that guy got an extra $3 because you didn't get here." And the guy from Happy Joe's, do you remember what he told you?
He's like, "Oh man, there was a hockey team we just got pizza for."
Yeah.
Some hockey team totally boned that driver, and then we boned that driver. Well, that driver still got a tip.
We did not bone that
It
driver.
just wasn't like an extra tip.
Right.
It wasn't a bonus tip.
Yeah. And again, we did not bone that driver. Please know that there was no boning of drivers.
In fact, you might say, you're really upset that I'm using the word bone.
Well, I just don't want them to think that some sort of like
See, by
sexual
JJ,
escapade, like that was
what would be wrong
that's
with
what
that,
he
though?
won.
What would be wrong with that, JJ?
I'll tell you why.
If it was consenting.
He's doing his job.
Yeah.
I don't want someone walking in the middle of this podcast and being like, "Hey, let's bone."
I mean,
Be
if
like, I'm trying to concentrate on
If
the
anything,
podcast.
I'm denigrating boning by using it as a pejorative. If anything, the guy who won should say he got boned, which means he got some. Right? So we boned that first one real good. We made his night.
Yeah.
Extra $3.
That's hard logic to argue with at that point.
Yeah.
So this is an example of the friendship I've shared with Tucker through all these years, because we've had some pretty odd things that have happened, just the two of us in random little adventures throughout the years.
Well, but to be fair though, if you are in JJ's orbit at any distance, you're gonna have some interesting stories that come along with it. I think
gonna be some messed up stuff.
You know, JJ is one of those people that you know a lot of people. You're very social, very connected, and so you know you've had a lot of great life experiences with all your friends. And I'm sure every friend you look at, you've got like a few stories you could tell that's just you and that person. I definitely treasure the ones that we have.
When I was planning this interview, I was thinking to myself, okay, what do I want to talk about when it comes to Tucker? What am I going to interview Tucker about? And so the first thing that came to my mind was the first time we spent time together, one-on-one. Do you remember?
The Final Fantasy Campout.
That was the one. One of the worst movies I've ever seen, so much so that you don't even see it on television.
Yeah.
TBS didn't even pick that one up.
Yeah. The year prior, there had been a campout for the X-Men movie, which had just come out that Tim Larson had spurred. Previous guest on the podcast, Tim Larson. And this was a time where the idea of camping out at a movie and trying to dress up for it and stuff was sort of a new thing. So we tried to make it happen with Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within. And unfortunately, that movie was not really worth camping out for, but we made some new memories, including you, me, and Dustin Buchanan almost asphyxiating on the smell of gas inside of my van that we slept in.
Tucker's van, painted to look like the Mystery Machine.
I didn't finish it though, so like mostly like the Mystery Machine,
reminiscent of the Mystery Machine.
Yeah.
We slept in that van, and there was obviously some sort of a leak somewhere.
This was a 1975 Econoline Ford conversion van that had been gutted and then lined with blue shag carpet and blue curtains. Used to have a table in the back of it until Jenny Sheet sat on it and snapped it at Trollwood one day. And then they put in like bucket seats and stuff, and there was a CB radio that was built into the head, like in the dashboard, and it was my very first vehicle. And but it was a mess, but I thought it was so cool that I had this basically like a room I was driving around in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People would have been very jealous of it today.
Yeah.
Because people were jealous of it back then too. Because I think vans represent a freedom, sort of. So like, you know, if you ever got into a big fight with your parents, you still have your van. You got a place to sleep. You could live out of that van for a little while.
Yeah, well, that was the nice thing with living with divorced parents was if there was a falling out with one, I could always go to the other one. I always had a spare backup, you know. Luckily, that never really happened, but that van had a lot of memories made around and inside that van.
I can believe that.
But
including the meeting of Tucker and JJ.
Including the meeting of Tucker and JJ.
Do you remember the first meal we ate together?
McDonald's
breakfast.
Yeah, because we couldn't take the gas smell anymore. Dustin was powering through it. He was fine. So he just slept there, and we went and got some breakfast. We broke our fast with McDonald's before we went and watched Final Fantasy: The Spirits.
Because this is like 8:30 in the morning, and we still had almost 4 hours before the movie theater opened up.
Yeah.
Because they weren't doing morning showings. No. You had to wait until noon 30.
Yeah, I mean, really camping out from the night prior was of no consequence because we still were first in line. Had we just showed up 5 minutes before the movie started,
we would have been just fine.
We would have been fine.
So, Tucker, let's tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Okay.
And who you are, what your deal is. Let's start with your nationality.
According to 23andMe, I am roughly 66% British and Irish, which means mostly Scottish and Irish because they loop Scottish in. And then after that, it's just a mix of broad European. But I'm very white.
What was your clan?
Many, but the primary one was the MacDonald clan, which was my mother's maiden name. But if anyone with Scottish ancestry, like I'm sure you know, they're sort of the clan whose name you became connected to, but there's probably a mix of so many other clans inside that heritage. But I literally went to the St. Andrews Society event one year, and was signing in and writing my name on a name tag. And this old woman who watched me put it on said, "Oh, you are a MacDonald, huh? You and I are enemies." And there was no sarcasm or anything in her voice. There wasn't hatred either. It was just a statement of fact.
Mm-hmm.
So there have been feuds between my clan and other clans that I was not a part of.
For those of you who don't know, there is the St. Andrews Society is a group of people who have Scottish heritage or who are interested in Scottish heritage in the Fargo-Moorhead region. So this goes all over the place. And once a year they get together and they have a dinner. I believe it's the first Saturday in November.
Okay. It was a long time ago for me. I haven't been in a long time.
I haven't been in a few years. My grandfather was one of the guys who started it.
Yeah.
And so every year my grandmother would buy a table and bring all of the grandkids, and they would honor her. They would have Johnny Gordon's wife stand up and they'd honor her. Doug Sillers and his wife and his daughter Cynthia carried the claymore of burden for a long time. Jim, I can't remember Jim's name. He was the master of ceremonies for a lot of years. They bring in a dance group, and they bring in the Heather and Thistle bagpipe group, and they serve cockaliki soup, bashed neeps, haggis, and people have a little, it's a fun little evening.
Well, I have a question about your Scottish heritage.
Mm-hmm.
So the last name Gordon, does it have different permutations? Like, were there Mick Gordons and other different kinds of spellings that were all part of the same group?
So Gordon remained Gordon pretty standard across the whole thing. Now, the Dawson side, my mom's side of the family, were the Davidsons before they came over. And that had all sorts of different changes. So, I mean, you're walking all over the place with that. And it's weird because when they immigrated to the United States, it's odd to me that they changed Davidson into Dawson. Like, Davidson seems to me like that would be a pretty standard name to be able to keep.
Yeah. If the play I was in 5th grade was correct, though, sometimes at Ellis Island, they would just give you a new name to differentiate you in some way.
Just for fun.
You might be a Davidson, but there are Davidsons already here. We're going to make sure that people know that you're a dirty Scot, so you're a Dawson now. With the McDonald's, there's Donald, Donnell, McDonald, and MacDonald's. Is like they're all the same. They're all clan Donald.
Any McDowells?
There could be. I wouldn't be surprised.
There's 2 people out there who remember that reference from the movie Coming to America.
One thing that the McDonald clan has that it can brag about, I guess, is that we were the inspiration for the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones.
Oh, really?
That's right, because in this, I want to say it was the 1600s, there's this thing that happened called the Massacre at Glencoe, Scotland, which was where I think the largest collection of the Clan Donald stayed. And basically the story was that there was a new king of England who wanted all the Scottish clans to swear fealty to him. The MacDonald clan leader missed the point he was supposed to meet them at to swear allegiance to these guys by like 2 days from something. And they took that as enough reason to order the slaughter of the MacDonald family. And what they did then was they sent soldiers into the Highlands and found the clan and came in as friends. And I want to say for a week or two, they basically lived with the Donalds as their guests, drinking and eating and all the things that these people would do together. And then one morning at like 5 a.m, they got up and they slaughtered almost all of the men of fighting age. Many of the women and children and elderly were able to run into the hillside where they tried to live throughout the winter, and many of them died. A few of the sons of the clan leader, I believe, survived. So the Donald line almost got wiped out, but they were mostly preserved, and then there became repercussions for that later down the line. But so one of the biggest pieces of inspiration for the Red Wedding, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, was from the MacDonalds.
Do you like the movie Braveheart?
Yeah, but not as like a historical document. As like I remember when I first watched this as a kid and thinking it was awesome, and that was before I knew that Mel Gibson was was who we know him
Nuttier
to be.
than squirrel turds.
Yeah.
When I went to Scotland a few years ago, a previous guest, Rachel Hoffman, was studying abroad in Edinburgh, and so my sister and I went to visit her, as well as our other friend Sean, and all of the gift shops have William Wallace memorabilia, but all of the William Wallace memorabilia look like Mel Gibson from Braveheart.
Because they know Americans are coming over.
Yeah, they're like,
Americans want to buy
let's
that.
get some Nope, that's not the voice I want to use. Let's get this stuff. It looks like it's good. Where can I get a bagpipe at? Hey, would you mind if I totally just completely ruin your culture? Would that be possible? Also, I went to the little cafe where J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone while she's, her. Have you ever heard her story?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's pretty awesome.
That, and it reminds me of Jewel. Like, Jewel has a story about how she lived out of her van for the first couple of years when she was trying to make it. I'm always really inspired at people who overcame great odds and didn't stop following their dream. It could have been easy just to get a job and eke out a life.
Yeah.
But if you have that desire and that wish, and it doesn't happen for any. In fact, it doesn't happen for most.
Yeah.
It just happens for those select few.
It's easy to give up. Giving up is easy.
It really is. Have you ever heard that expression how, like, it takes more muscles to frown than it does to smile?
Who hasn't heard that?
Is that true?
If it is, then I must have a pretty muscular mouth.
Right.
Right.
I always worry I'm going to end up getting those lines on my face from smiling all the time. So I've been trying to. 2019 is my year to frown. So I'm just going to frown a bunch to try and balance out my face.
Is this another Jenny Craig program?
No. No, this.
You only get so many smile points per day.
Mm-hmm. Also, when I go into some of my consultations at Jenny Craig, I'm always like, Jenny. And they don't get it because I don't think that they're big movie fans. I've got 12 Jennies. I'm doing an impression of Forrest Gump, everyone.
Yeah.
Tom Hanks, can we just we're so lucky to have him.
He's one of those guys that just deserves to have some attention every day, even for a little bit.
And apparently he's just a genuinely funny guy. He took that great photo of there's some dude passed out at a bar, and so Tom Hanks picks up his phone and takes a selfie with him as a sort of thing like, your friends are never going to believe you.
Tom Hanks, I think you early on just said once, man, just really want to be best friends with Tom Hanks.
I think he and I would be best friends. If I was given the opportunity, Tom Hanks and I I mean, I'd replace you as the producer of this podcast.
I would understand. There's a very long list of people I would replace you with.
Oh, good.
Very long.
Good. Okay, so we've got your lineage down at this point. You're a North High kid.
Yeah, Fargo North, 2003 graduation.
What elementary schools did you go to?
Horace Mann Hornets.
Mm-hmm.
I loved Horace Mann. And in fact, Horace Mann is sort of locally famous for the urban legend that a elephant was buried underneath it.
Mm-hmm. Traveling circus. Elephant died.
Elephant dies, and they're just going to bury it where it lays. And then years later, they build Horace Mann on top of it. And I think it's been pretty much proven that that's apocryphal, I believe.
Oh, you got some word of the day toilet paper you're working through
Shout out
over
to
there?
Mike Redlinger if you are in town and listening. I've heard of your expertise on this subject, and we want to get you on the podcast because that was a thing that we were told about as early as kindergarten.
That you're going to go to the elementary school.
That there's an elephant buried underneath here. I even there was a hollow spot right underneath like the gym floor. It was just like poured cement or something. And I found it and I told Mr. D, who was our gym teacher, and we had to call him Mr. D because his last name was Dick. And you can't let elementary school students call a teacher Mr. Dick because they'll just run wild with that. And he told me I found the elephant.
Really?
Yeah. He was lying, though.
He was a liar.
It was just probably a cavity.
Have you confronted him as an adult?
I don't know if he's around anymore.
I've got one teacher I'd like to confront on 9/11. I didn't have a
laugh at premises, by the way.
I know.
When I hear the premise of something starting, that's when I start laughing.
9/11. We're talking about the 9/11. I didn't have a first period class, and I remember walking upstairs, and my mom was staring at the television. And my mom never watched TV, so I knew that something was important. And at that point, only one plane had hit the World Trade Center. And so it was a matter of like, oh my gosh, how can a mistake like this happen? This is horrible. This is horrendous. I can't believe it. And we're watching, and then you see the second plane hit, and all of a sudden the sobering fact that like, this isn't a mistake.
Yeah.
So I get to school, and I remember Gwen Stark coming in and immediately putting the television on. And so second period, third period, fourth period, we are glued to the television just watching this footage because at that point, the plane that had, gone into the Pentagon had been part of it. And so we're just, you're wondering how many more horrors can take place in one day. And I get to my government class. And I'm not going to mention the teacher's name because I think he might still be an educator. But we'll call him Mr. Not So Astute. So I get into that class, and Mr. Not So Astute does not have the television on, and I think, he's just getting to this classroom, and so I go to turn the television on, and he goes, "Sit down." He goes, and he addresses the class, and says, "We all know that something's happening today, but we've got to keep going on, and we've got to keep doing our work." And so we did pardon my language here, a fucking worksheet and spent the entire period sitting there not knowing what's going on, knowing that every other classroom is being glued to this, that our world was changing instantly.
Yeah.
And our government class, we do a stupid worksheet instead. And mind you, this is September, so this is like the second, third week of class?
We have not been in school for very long at all.
Yeah. We're not under some kind of deadline to get something done. And so I walk out and I'm trying to find out what happened. They go, "Well, what do you mean? The towers fell." And I'm like, I'm going, wait, what's happening? And to this day, I will hold a grudge that this person couldn't identify what education really means because he took that away from us.
Yeah. You know what? I want to say that I remember, like everyone, I remember where I was when I was doing when it happened. And I think I was on my way to a social studies class. It might have been U.S. government. I can't remember if it was or not. I think the teacher was Mr. Oberholzer, who was awesome. And my friend Charlie Johnson saying, "Hey, did you hear like a plane crashed into the World Trade Center?" And I went, "Whoa." But I actually didn't know what the World Trade Center was. Like, I didn't really know about it. I was a sophomore in high school, and I had never really thought of the World Trade Center before. So I had no concept of it until I walked into his class. And he had the TV on, and we all sat down, and we were supposed to do something that day. But he said, I think it was just a history class, and he said we would normally be doing something else today, but you're watching history happen right now, so you should be watching this right now. And that's what we did. And I remember watching the towers fall and everything, just sitting in his class, going, "What is going on?" That was sort of like the assassination of the Archduke that started off World War I, that essentially set the tone for the 20th century and sort of said this is the beginning of a new normal. And I think September 11th was the exact same thing for a new generation. It was like everything is measured from before and after that event.
So that's just an example of how one person can completely miss the ball. And I hope that he's the person who has to stand outside when it's really cold out and have to like help kids get in and out of the bus.
Can you imagine being the teacher who not only makes your kids do their worksheet on that day, but then like gives a kid an F for doing a bad job?
Oh yeah, right. Like, what were you, distracted? He's the kind of guy who, honestly, if that had been a day when we were supposed to have a test, would have administered a test.
Yeah.
What a tool. So I've seen him once, but I didn't go up to him because I was working
really
at the time.
You've carried this a long time.
And I have told hundreds of people about this.
We got to bring him in here and you can confront him.
I'd like to. I would actually like to know if he regrets it, because if he tells me, if he says, I made a mistake, I'd be like, oh.
Was that in keeping with his personality like throughout the year, or was it something where he was like, "Listen, a terrible thing is going on, but we need to continue with our lives"?
It was not a matter of,
if you don't do this worksheet, the terrorists win.
Pretty much.
That was what it was.
It was this guy. This guy wasn't giving us, refuge from what was going on in the world, and maybe like 50 minutes of peace. He was just. It just would bother his syllabus too much. He was this kind of teacher.
Gotta grade these before Thursday. Come on.
He wore pants that were just slightly too small, and then he'd help other people at their work, like at their desk, and bend over, and so his giant ass would be in your face all the time. And I remember a couple of times like turning over to like look at my backpack, and like we're talking about inches, my nose inches from this guy's butt. So, and his class was so unfun. Oh.
I'm sorry you had such a bad experience, because I actually have nothing but positive things to say about all my social studies teachers throughout Ben Franklin and North High. I had really great ones every single time. I had one in 8th grade, Mr. Fisher, who is the driest person you will ever meet, but also really, really funny. And so you don't expect it until he says something. And Spice Girls were big when I was in 8th grade. And he had set up the overhead projector to run us through some notes, and this was a guy who spoke just like this all of the time. This never changed. And someone had stuck a Spice Girls sticker to the side of the projector and then said, "Hey, Mr. Fisher, do you like the Spice Girls?" and points at the photo, or at the sticker. And he sort of bends at the waist, looks at it, stands back up, and goes, "Yes, I love the Spice Girls. They are da bomb diggity." I loved that man. He was awesome. And then he would talk about like, "Okay, kids, now I'm going to give you a little bit of homework tonight. And I don't want to be hearing excuses tomorrow about how you couldn't get your homework done because you stayed out till 6 or 7 at night, drinking your Pepsi Big Slams and chewing your chewing gum, playing hacky sack. I don't want any of that here." And if he caught you chewing gum in class, he would take his ruler, point it at you, and go, "Gum chewer!"
Yeah.
I loved Mr. Fisher. He was great.
I would say probably 50-50. So half of my teachers in social studies were great. And then when I mean great, I mean really actually great, phenomenal educators, people who've left a mark on me for the rest of my life. And then the other half were just garbage.
Yeah. I had so many good experiences, but largely too, I grew up around teachers. My dad was a teacher in the Fargo public school system starting in 1985, the year I was born. And so as a kid, I was going to Ben Franklin all the time. They had a computer lab we got to use. I was actually on set for the Blenders music video that they shot at Ben Franklin.
Was that Nyman,
I'm not sure. They did some stuff in the hallway and then some stuff on the stage, so I'll have to go back and figure out which one it was. But my sister and I got to hang out for the whole shoot because Dad was the one that gave them access to it and stuff. So I grew up with teachers all over the place.
Was it hard being the son of an educator who was really revered? I mean, everyone knew Mr. Lucas. He was, your dad is one of the primo educators I've ever met in my life.
Agreed.
Because he doesn't just show up for a paycheck and leave when it's time to leave. I think he takes a genuine interest in students. He's caring, he's compassionate, but he also is tough when it needs to be tough.
The teachers that make a difference are the ones who give a shit.
Yeah.
And he's one of the ones that gives a shit.
In fact, I've noted that since he's retired, there is a hole in your dad's life that I think he's looking to fill. And I think every great educator knows what that hole is. And sometimes you see them come back as subs.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you see them come back and they'll be long-term subs for other great teachers. But was it tough? I mean, because you were also involved in theater. Your dad was a theater teacher. Was that a difficult thing going through high school? I've always wondered that. I never had any friends whose parents were educators.
I thought it was going to be tough. There were moments that were uncomfortable, but it was far less than even your wildest imagination would make. And partly with that is that my dad understood that, right? So he didn't go out of his way to try to embarrass me. He wouldn't let anyone show me favoritism because I was his son. If anything, I think there was a little more expected of you because you were a teacher's kid, kind of like the pastor's kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
But my home life was so great, and life at Ben Franklin North for myself was actually pretty good, all things considered. So I thought it would be tougher, and going into 7th grade was the first year that I would be going to a school that my dad was teaching at, and I knew he would be directing the plays, and I wanted to do plays, but I was thinking about not trying out just because my dad was the director. So even just by getting in, I knew I would probably get some flack for being cast by my dad. And my dad said to me, point right in my face, he said, "If you suck, I won't cast you."
Wow.
I won't. And so I got in, and it was fun. And then after that, I mean, no one really used it against me, at least to my face.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
But I think they all liked him too. No one really thought that there was nepotism going on there.
Did you take his class?
I took his drama class my freshman year, which was a lot of people's introduction to theater. It was the first time in the North school system at the time that you could take a theater class. And Dad's theater class was really well known because everyone wanted to be in it, because it wasn't a class where you were taught, okay, this is what a script is and this is what acting is, and you're all going to have to do a play and stuff like that. Dad really took the approach that really what I want people to do is get outside their shell, understand what it is to do something in front of other people. And so there would be acting exercises and drama exercises, but there would also be things like trust falls. So they probably would never do it now, but we all got to jump off the building into like a giant parachute-y thing.
Yeah.
Things like that. Things that would get kids to go outside get outside their shell, try things for the first time. And every kid that took that class got something out of it that was actually a useful tool in their life going forward. So that was a lot of fun, was taking that class. And then when I went to high school the next year, then I was taking drama classes, which were specifically about theater craft.
And those were not from your dad. Those
No,
were from
that was Shelley Herman was the teacher for that.
who you ended up having like a really great adult relationship
absolutely.
with too.
Shelley was great. Shelley is, wasn't your typical teacher. She was one of those students that didn't just talk down to kids. She would talk to you as if you were a person. And if you disappointed her, she would talk to you the same way she would talk to an adult that disappointed her. But we haven't been in touch for a long time. But yeah, Shelley was great.
So
We didn't. Our relationship wasn't quite like you and Gwen Stark, because
Yeah.
Gwen Stark has been like a mother figure in
to
your
me.
life.
Yep.
Shelley for me was like a sister, if any.
Oh, that's interesting. So you graduate from high school, and I mean, would I be correct here? And if I said it took up a couple of years before you figured out what the next stage of your life was going to be?
Yeah. It's hard for me to even say I came to a conclusion of, oh, this is what the next stage is going to be. I did try to do college, found out very quickly I didn't want to, unfortunately.
No, I don't think you need to say unfortunately.
I don't mean that about college not working. I didn't figure it out soon enough to save my dad some money. That's what I mean to say. My dad paid for a semester that just kind of went thrown into the garbage.
Like being in the line at McDonald's and saying, I'll have a McChicken. Wait a minute, I don't like chicken. No, I'll have a quarter pounder.
Kind of like that. I don't know if I would have ever been diagnosed with like an attention deficit thing. One of my many failings is that if I don't want to do something, like if I just don't want to learn something, I'm not going to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to do it. I'm just not. In high school, I hated math. And I would walk into the math class just angry because it's math time now. And I struggled with math, but convincing myself that I wanted to do it, I wasn't able to. So I'm really stubborn in that respect, in that if I'm not interested in it, getting me to pay attention to it is going to be a struggle, even for me, just to say pay attention to this thing. But if I am interested in something, then I embrace it wholeheartedly.
I find it interesting that we still hold on to this archaic idea of we're going to force every student to take these required classes.
Yeah.
I understand in a high school setting, you need to prepare people to go out into the world and have a basic understanding of math. Maybe you'll ignite something in a student. Same thing for science. But you at least get to start to test the waters of, oh, I get to choose things I like so I can take a creative writing class.
Yeah.
Or I can load up on sciences and I can take a bunch of different sciences. And you would think that when we got to the college level, depending on the college you chose, that you wouldn't be required to take these, level 101, 102 math classes.
Yeah.
Because some people spend 2 years, the first 2 years of college, just getting rid of their generals.
Yeah.
And that's not fun. I always tell people, listen, take your generals, but take at least one class that pertains to something you want. Have that be the class that you go to. I remember Britta Nelson, who was a third guest on this show.
Yep.
Talking about how she took the history of rock and roll.
Yeah.
And it was her favorite class.
Yeah.
And she couldn't wait to go to that class. And if she could go back in time, she would have taken that much earlier. And so I wish that colleges were better about telling kids, like, listen, take something that interests you. Find something that is.
Yeah.
Because maybe, and do you think that could have been part of your issue, is if they had said, listen, Tucker, we're not going to force you to take these generals. We want you to take something that truly interests you.
Yeah.
And if a general requires one of those things to
Yeah.
get into it. So, for example, if you're going to go into photography, let's say, right?
Right.
And part of photography was you're going to have to expose all of your own film and everything. So they need one chemistry course.
Yep.
So you just understand the basics of mixing. Then I can understand that. But
Well, okay, so the current structure of education, let's just call it that, was originally established at the turn of the 20th century when we had a different economy that needed different things, right? The Industrial Revolution had been going on and all these different things. So we needed to produce students that could fill these jobs. And there was nothing really like education at the time that was available to so many people. So we made the system, but then once something becomes sufficiently big, it adapts very slowly. So if you think of like a ship in the ocean, a speedboat is going to make a turn a lot quicker and faster and more agile than a battleship. It's going to take a lot longer to turn the battleship around. And we've done a really piss poor job of redirecting this battleship of education in the way that it needs to go. That just doesn't adapt as quickly as the world changes, which is why teachers who give a shit are the most important thing we have, because those are the people that they're on the ground, they're with the students directly. They're the ones who have the best idea of what this student needs for their education. Going into finer detail after that, I wouldn't know what to say or do with it. I'm someone who was lucky enough that I had really good teachers growing up. I wish I had gotten through a system that taught me what I know now, which is that I love to learn. That the act of learning and growing and becoming better is something that you should want to cultivate, but the way we do it now doesn't cultivate that for most people. Some people do, but in their system, learning is remembering facts and figures and dates and passing tests and getting good scores. And that sort of a system, I didn't care enough to try hard enough to get all of the rewards that system wanted me to get. So that can kneecap you in kind of a way, but then I got lucky afterwards in that I just happened to foster relationships with people that got me into professions that I found interesting. And those were professions that didn't require that I have a bachelor's degree or anything else like that. Had I not been interested in media, I don't know. I don't know what I would have ended up doing.
So let's talk about your career in media.
Do it.
So MCAT was a big part of your life for a long
Moorhead
time.
Community Access Television. Shout out to Dana Harris and Greg Carlson.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah.
I remember visiting you many days while you were working at MCAT. And what did MCAT do? Or does?
So I think they've changed their name now, I believe, to Moorhead Community Access Media. MCAM. But at the time, MCAT, Moorhead Community Access TV, essentially the way it worked was that if a cable provider, say Cable One, wants to move into a town, they have to basically be granted a franchise to be in that town. And the way the laws worked, if you were granted a franchise in a city, there would be one of the conditions of getting the franchise agreement with that you would have to set 1 or 2 or 3 channels aside for public use. And there would be some mechanism to fund that. And in the city of Moorhead, what they would do is that the cable company would pay a fee annually to the city, and then the city would carve off a chunk of that to be the budget for MCAT, which was a nonprofit. I think is still a nonprofit. And so that was the way it was managed, and I worked for MCAT, and we managed, at the time, I think it was just 1 channel, which I think they've grown since then. And that would include all of the city council meetings in Moorhead. It included the Clay County
Commissioners
meetings. And then citizens of Moorhead would be able to put programming on there for free as long as it met certain guidelines of content you couldn't put on TV. And you would also get access to equipment to make stuff. And the idea behind all of it was that this was supposed to be something that would support freedom of speech. So someone who didn't have the budget to try to make some kind of a mass media message or produce a show that talked about a certain topic, they could use this in place of that. And of course, this was all established before the internet and YouTube was a thing. And so now I think the reason they changed it was that to say that they were just TV wouldn't really begin to scratch the surface, and they realized that they have to switch over to a different platform as time goes on because that's where everybody is. So what the future of public access TV is going to be, I don't really know. I've been outside of it for a long time, but that was the first 3 or 4 years of my professional career doing media stuff.
Probably part of their job is going to continue to be able to administer equipment to people.
Yep.
So if you have an idea for a podcast or a television program,
exactly,
they'll have equipment and they'll have people who are knowledgeable about that equipment who can not do it for you, but can show you how to operate things and set you on your own.
Depending on what city you live in too. I mean, almost any place that has cable connectivity is going to have a public access channel of some kind. And if you live in a big city, there's a good chance that you've got an awesome one, meaning you're going to see some content on there that will blow your mind.
You know who had an amazing public access station?
Don Kress.
Don Kress, who was on down in it was Perham to Detroit Lakes. They had a movie review show that their local video rental place did every single week.
Oh, okay.
Every parade, every, Turtle Days, Looney Days, Water Crazy Days, they taped the parade. They would have just a stationary camera and tape the parade, and you could watch it. They had a cooking show that took place in someone's double wide trailer, and I remember the guy had just tons of jewelry on, and he would do things like fish fries. Looking back, I probably took that for granted because we got that station via the antenna at my lake cabin.
Yep.
And on rainy days, we'd sit and watch it for hours and hours and hours.
You sort of get something out of it differently that you get out of any other TV that's hyper produced and full of commercials, and you've seen it all the time. Whereas something like public access TV, depending on what's happening in it, can just be engaging because it's not like what you're seeing in all the other channels. I only knew that Don Kress had a TV show because Bryce Richardson told me that one night he woke up at 2 a.m. to a video of Don Kress pointing a gun at the screen because he had like a gun show.
Yeah. So technically it wasn't Don Kress's show. And Don Kress used to build all the sets for Fargo Public Schools.
Shout out to Don Kress.
He was amazing. And now he works in the Fargo City Planning Office. But he's an incredibly knowledgeable man about many different things, and someone had brought him on this antique gun show. So if you can think of like the Antique Roadshow, locally produced, and this one just happened to be a firearms, and he had white gloves. I remember when Bryce Richardson saw that because he was at my lake cabin, and he woke everybody else up. There were maybe 20 of us there, and he's like, everyone wake up, wake up, wake up. Don Kress has got guns. We said, what are you talking about? And so let's talk about things that you've done creatively. So you're
this podcast.
You're an ensemble member of Theater B.
I'm an ensemble member of Theater B. I became an ensemble member of Theater B in 2007. So I've been there for over 10 years. And then in my spare time, I've done short films. We've competed in the 48-hour film challenge. Greg Carlson and I have competed in the International Doc Challenge. Which
is taking you to the Toronto Film Festival.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then after MCAT and a brief stint at the Fargo Theater, I got into poker television. And so there was a TV show, actually it's still on TV right now, called the Heartland Poker Tour. It was started in town here in 2005 by Greg Lang and Todd Anderson. And I had a friend who worked there and ended up getting a job there as a production assistant, became an editor. And then was there for 3 years, I think, before I got into advertising for a little bit, worked at Sundog Interactive, and then got a job at Poker Night in America and worked in poker TV again for like 5 years. Now I'm a freelancer.
Although freelance does not include taping weddings.
Does not include taping weddings.
That is something you're not. That's not Tucker's bag, baby.
I do offer event videography if someone wants me to, unless it's for a wedding. And that's for two reasons. One, I don't like going to weddings. I'll go to your wedding happily, but unless you're like someone who I care about, going to your wedding is just so low on my list of priorities. But also there are so many wedding videographers in town that
hard
actually
to be competitive.
Well, and they actually care about making really good wedding content. So when you get all these people in town that actually care about that, I'm not going to step in what they're doing. So yeah, if you want videography for a wedding, talk to Eclipse Multimedia, talk to Grassfire. If you want some kick-ass photography, call Kenzie Wallner Photography. But I am not your guy.
No. So let's talk about the projects you'd never finish.
So most of them?
Yep. So
we've got a couple.
I remember filming a short project with Tucker about a guy who gets a customer survey receipt, like in his lunch, like from a fast food joint.
Oh, that's finished.
And, yeah, but how many years did it take you to finish it?
It's like 7.
Yeah. So we filmed it, and when I saw it, it was like looking in a time capsule and seeing a much younger man. In fact, I made a bird flu reference, and one of the only lines you can hear me saying is that, like, well, people in sports eat chicken wings, and this bird flu thing's really freaking everybody out. It was years after the bird flu. Years and years and years.
Yeah.
What else do you have that's unfinished? Do you have anything else sitting out there?
Yeah, that you're in, the Cupid short that we shot 3 years ago, I think now. And that's still in progress.
Now, what does that mean in progress? Does that mean you've got it on a hard drive somewhere?
That means it's not finished, and I haven't given up on it yet.
Oh.
But I still have all
Okay.
the footage. And there is an edit of it, but it's not a complete one. So, I mean, that'll come out at some point. I'm trying to think, though, of other like film projects that are out there. I think the only one that I have that isn't finished is the Cupid one, but plenty of them, they took me a while to complete. And that's partly through many of my faults of only being able to motivate myself so much, but also the problem of taking on too much on your own. So one of my terrible habits when I'm trying to make a project like a short film is that I try to take on too much of it myself, because it's a labor of love for me. And then that drains your resources, right? So you could like spend a month shooting something and now you got to spend 4 months editing it.
And that's the not so fun part.
That's the not so fun
editing.
part. So I definitely struggle through those things. But another part of it too is, especially with film projects, I have a really bad habit of starting one before I have a really complete and tight idea of what the finished product should be. So the Cupid one is one where, and we're not going to divulge any other details about it in case it does come out at some point.
I burned my mouth during that, really bad on toothpaste.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I didn't know you burned your mouth on a toothpaste.
Yeah, there must have been enough peppermint in that toothpaste where I
Shoot.
burned my mouth.
I owe you a balm, a lip balm.
A balm?
Some sort of a mouth balm.
No, you don't owe me anything other than finishing the project, but keep going.
But so there were parts of it that I had thought out, and then I realized there were these massive gaps that just don't make sense. When we made Mercedes Ray, I was writing that script, and I was like, I don't know how to end this. So she gets a gorilla, and he attacks the presidents. So
I got heat stroke during that filming. Something bad happens to me all the time.
and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm actually pretty okay with that. That's,
In fact, let me think. I'm trying to think of a single time I've worked with you where I haven't ended up getting hurt
well, and
in
so,
some way, shape, or form.
And we've talked about it before on the podcast with Greg here, is that it can be difficult to be self-motivating when you don't have a deadline. And when it's not how you're making your living, and it's not anything else like that. If it's this thing that you're doing when you're not doing the other things that you're supposed to be doing. And that was actually one of the big motivators for doing this podcast for me, was that the way that we do this is something that it's easy to turn around and get the finished product out there, and we could be making something regularly. But I think if I remember correctly, that's it. There are other projects out there that I had started that never got finished, that got abandoned. So I once tried to make a documentary in the Fargo Theater with my friend Jessica Rao, and unfortunately I was really immature and uncommitted to it, and kind of left her hanging, and she had to create a different project for her school at the time. So that has happened before, especially when I was younger. When I try to do something, realized I wasn't up to snuff for it, and failed miserably.
In the documentary about
That
the
was
Fargo
my college
Theater,
was failure.
failure.
Really.
Yeah, sure.
That really has been my school. Has been just miserable failure.
I was there for the part of the planning process of the Fargo Theater documentary.
Yep.
And I remember one of the big setbacks that you brought your good friend Joel Farron in for was, well, how are you going to record the pipe organ and get good sound from it? Because it is an air-based organ. It's not like there's a digital signal. You can't patch into something. And even trying to record just with ambient, recording devices wouldn't give you a great sound. And so it was like, well, do you mic every single organ pipe?
Another part of the calculus here too, though, is it's a lot of fun to start projects, right? It's a lot of fun to start a new project. Oh, I've got this idea for a new project, and it'll be awesome. And then you get all this creative juices flowing, and then you get started on it, and then that wears off, and you still got to give birth to the baby, but you just don't have, for whatever reason, that same chutzpah you had at the beginning of it.
Well, and how many friends do we have who have great ideas for a movie, but don't go
all of us
anywhere?
We're a bunch of young white guys who grew up in America. Like we see ourselves as destined to be the arbiters of like movie content. So I think we all have that. But definitely and then also there's what happens if you complete something and then it's not good. There's
yeah.
always fear of that.
That's the worst.
And I've been there,
Yep.
and that sucks. That is not fun.
For that, just listen to episode whatever it is where we
It's
talk
the
about
Resurrex
Resurrex,
episode. Yeah, I can't remember which one it was, but yeah.
which I think you're a little too hard on yourself when you look at that on paper and say like how old you were, the process, the fact that nonlinear editing was in its infancy at the time.
God, I was using a program called Video Wave on an old PC, and that's how I edited that thing. Because I thought this is awesome.
That was at a time when you took the yellow, white, and red out of a digital camera, right? Using audio wave, and so you weren't even taking in a digital signal.
No, I was taking in a FireWire digital
were you?
signal. It was all mini DV tape.
But you were putting it in there in real time, right?
Yes,
You're recording it in real time.
Yep. Anytime you're using a tape-based recording where you're recording along a physical thing, it has to be in real time. Yeah. So I definitely learned the hard ways to do things before I got any good at them.
But I think you've ended up with some really amazing things. One thing I want to definitely compliment you on is a movie a month, which is a project that you were working on.
2010.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
8 years
Where
ago.
every single month Tucker pushed himself to make a movie. And some of them were, some people might say, well, you took a lazy way out of this.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that they were incredibly fun. Like the one time you put all those cameras up at the party and you did the time lapse of the party. That was a ton of fun.
That was one of my favorite ones. That one's called Hoper. And so, so basically, the year 2010, I was already struggling with the idea, with knowing that I was someone who was starting projects but not finishing them. And I thought, well, maybe a way to do this could be to get myself held publicly accountable, like by broadcasting out there, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And then there was a punishment if I never came up with it. And what ended up happening was I would ask you at the beginning of every month to record a challenge to me that was, Tucker, if you do not complete a movie that's at least 2 minutes in length and upload it by this time at the end of the month, you have to do X. And so that motivated me. But halfway through the year, I hit a wall and I thought, oh man, I don't know if I can keep doing this. And then the movies kind of became simpler after that.
Mm-hmm.
One was experimental, where I basically created a fake movie trailer for the Bela Lugosi movie White Zombie, because that was a public domain film that you could download. That was still a fun year. The only one I didn't make was the December.
Right.
And that took a year to make.
Which one was that?
That was the music video for Tony Magnell's band Chronicide.
Oh, I'm in that too.
You're in that too.
What am I getting shoved up my butt in that? Do you remember?
You're holding a Barbie, and I think a machete's going in your ass.
Yep. Yep. Because you debuted that. You hosted some pretty raucous Halloween parties. That was always sort of your signature event of the year. Those Halloween parties.
Mike Resel and I started teaming up and producing this Halloween party called Release the Beast. The idea being that there would be some sort of monster of Resel's creation that would be released amongst the party goers at midnight, at the stroke of midnight. And that was sort of the basis for the concept of doing a party, and then we would do these Halloween parties. And we haven't done one for a while. We might, if we can, do one this year at a location that I'll talk with you about once we're off the air.
Lovely.
Hopefully it will happen. But yeah, Halloween is the best holiday.
Yeah, it is.
It's the best holiday. I get Christmas, you get presents. But on Christmas, you don't get to dress up like a Power Ranger.
You've had some fun Halloween costumes over the years as well. One of my favorites was the Gentleman Mascot year.
That was fun.
What, Mr. Peanut?
Missy Teeters was Mr. Peanut. I was the Pringles Man. Scott Haugen was Captain Crunch. And
was Brad Colonel Sanders?
Was Colonel Sanders. And the idea being that if it was a mascot that had some sort of a title,
yeah,
we allowed Mr. for Mr. Peanut.
Well, because he's got a monocle.
He's got a monocle.
He's classy as
clearly high society.
Yeah. There's the year that you were really obsessed with Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm still obsessed with it. Yeah. I just decided to go as Riker that year. This actually, though, the love for Halloween is because of Mama Luke.
Really?
Yeah.
And so Mama Luke, your grandmother, who is the only real living cartoon character I've ever met in my life. If you think of Okay, if we're gonna write a Dukes of Hazzard episode and we're gonna have a 90-year-old Kentucky woman,
Yeah.
what would she look like? Okay, let's just cast Mama Luke in that role.
You're 100% right, but I'd also like to say that Mama Luke is my favorite person on this planet.
I don't.
And
doubt
once
that.
I'm living on a planet that she's not in anymore, I'm going to be much more cynical than I already am because she is a ray of sunshine.
And she is one of our our get list of guests.
Yeah.
She's right there at the top.
oh yeah, yeah.
Mary Ellen Lucas.
I'm hoping to make a trip there sometime this year because I have, my dad's side of the family is mostly located in Kentucky, and so I don't get to see them very often. So
I'd love your Uncle Tim as well. I enjoy him a lot too.
But yeah, Mama Luke was the one who got me in, like really made it awesome because she would make costumes for us. So Mama Luke's really creative, loves to work with her hands, loves to sew, loves to make porcelain dolls, loves to do stained glass, but it loves to write stories. And so she offered to make any of her grandkids their Halloween costume. And in first grade, I wanted to be Donatello from the Ninja Turtles. And she would go and find like a pattern that you could just go buy a costume pattern, and she made me the most badass Ninja Turtles costume any kid could ever hope for. It was like a mascot costume. It had muscles sewn into it, and it had a head that would go all the way around your head, but your face would stick through the mouth. And the colors were correct, and it came with a shell and the front carapace that you would zip together. And then I used a vacuum cleaner tube as my bow staff. And it was so awesome. It was just the best costume ever. And then second grade, I went as Batman, and she made me this amazing Batman costume with, it was all black with black ears and a long flowing cape that I could twirl around. And it was kind of based off the Michael Keaton Batman. Ended up throwing up on it at second grade after we played bingo, which is a whole different story. Third grade, I wanted to be Wolverine, and she made me a Wolverine costume. The only complaint of which I would have was that she didn't cut the sleeves off because she wanted me to stay warm when I was going out there trick-or-treating, right? Wolverine doesn't have sleeves. I had sleeves with my costume. But, she took coat hangers and cut off chunks of them, wrapped them in like a silvery cloth and sewed them onto gloves for me and made the whole costume. Fourth grade, Red Power Ranger. And she could make everything except for the helmet. So she made the full suit with a full pattern. And then I had to get one of my dad's motorcycle helmets and he let me spray paint it red and draw dinosaur lines on it. So those are the 4 years that my grandmother made me my Halloween costume. And it was just the best thing in the world. And it instilled in me a love for that holiday and for people who put in a lot of effort to enjoy that holiday.
If you could ask her to make a costume for you this year as an adult, what would it be?
It's a really good question. So when I do go out for Halloween still, sometimes adult life does intercede, but I actually try to go as bald characters now. Because it's just easy for a bald guy or a guy who is mostly bald, which is me, to go as a bald character. One year I went as both Professor Xavier and Lex Luthor, which would just depend on if I was sitting in a wheelchair at the moment or not. But gosh, what would I want to go for? Well, I wouldn't need Mama Luke to make it for me. The ultimate costume that I would want would be Metalhead from the Ninja Turtles.
Whoa!
Right, and I've had dreams for a long time of trying to make something like that. That I don't think she would. What I have in my head, I don't think she would make. But if Mama Luke called me up tomorrow and was like, "Tucker, honey, for Halloween, I'm gonna make you a metalhead," I'd be so happy. It'd be the best thing ever.
Shoot, Tucker! Shoot, Tucker!
Now let me tell you.
Let me tell you.
Let me tell you. Mama Luke was in a movie that you and I made for the 48 Hour Film Festival in 2006 called Milk Babies. She played herself.
Yep.
And she was a crowd hit.
Milk Babies.
Thank you, baby.
Oh, Mama Luke was so wonderful. The movie should have centered around Mama Luke. We should have given her an action sequence, but one thing we had to add in, which I had never worked with before on a film shoot, as professional as I am, was Mama Luke's got to take a nap.
Yep.
So we're gonna she's need to wrap for a little while, and she's gotta go inside and take a nap. And we're like, oh, okay. So we'll do this. Milk Babies is a great example of how sometimes Tucker's dialogue gets away from him because I ended up with this enormously long speech about baby bunnies that just
I didn't know that JJ was a bad actor at the time too.
Oh God,
he's good now, but
it's so bad. Well, it's only what you can work with, right? You know. I'd like to see what Anthony Hopkins could do with that dialogue.
yeah.
There were all these baby bunnies. That's actually one of the things that's hardest for me to go back and watch.
Really?
I hate my performance in that.
I hate it too, but that's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
The rest of the movie is great, but
yeah,
no.
everybody else is wonderful, but me, everybody, including rest in peace Matt Burkholder.
Matthew Burkholder
Good friend of
would have
you.
just had his 50th or 40. He just had a birthday.
Yeah.
I want to say it was his 49th. So yeah, R.I.P. Matthew Burkholder, who was in that movie and a lot of my movies.
Mm-hmm. I remember sitting in Matt's hospital room with you on, was it Christmas Eve?
It was a couple days before.
It was a couple days before.
Because I want to say, I think we were there the 23rd, and I think he passed away the 26th or 7th.
And it was just one of those times where you know you're talking to someone probably for the last time. For me, at least. I was talking to Matt for the last time.
I allowed myself to delude myself that it wasn't going to be the last time, and I regret that. I really do.
Matt never took. There was never one moment there where Matt, said, oh, let me tell you, here's some things I regret. Here's some things. Oh, here's some bequeathments.
Regret was not in Matthew's nature.
No. In fact, if the
in
world,
a positive sense,
the world is lucky to have him for the amount of time it did, and I think as long as we keep remembering him, we're gonna be a better place.
Who was the first person in your life? Well, actually, no. I guess it would make sense that it actually was a family member, your father. I was gonna ask you, what was the first time that someone died that you finally went, oh, this is what grief is? And for most people like me, you expect your grandparents to die first. So when they did, I was sad about it. But then when Matthew died, I learned a different feeling, and I was like, oh, that's what this is. So was your father's death the first time you felt like that, or was there a death in your life that sort of affected you in that way?
No, it would have been, my dad died when I was 19 years old. He was diagnosed with cancer, and then it became terminal when I was still 18.
It's pretty quick though, too, right?
Quick, yeah. It was within 6 months from diagnosis to death.
Yeah.
And I think that'd be the first one. I had lost my grandmother on my mom's side, but she had Alzheimer's from the time when I was very, very little. And so I didn't really know her at all. My grandfather also passed when I was very, very young on my dad's side. And so while I had regret that I never got to know that individual, I never ended up feeling that like, oh, it's this huge loss. It's this huge part of my life that's been ripped away.
Yeah.
And so it would have been my dad, and that would have been Matt for you, huh?
It was Matt for me, where it was the kind of grief where I guess if it's like a tide, but you don't see the tide coming. So I would just be walking around doing whatever, and suddenly, bam, I'd be hit with grief, and I'd have to stop, and I'd be crying. And it would just come in waves, and I wouldn't see it coming. And then over time, the waves got less and less, and it became sort of like a bag I could just carry around with me. I always had it, and from time to time, I could put the bag down, and it was fine. And while I don't experience it at that level anymore, I still feel the pangs of it, because when you're growing up, you expect the older members of your family to die before you, but you don't expect to lose your friends. You don't expect to see people who, for all intents and purposes, statistically should have had a much longer life than they did.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was just a really new feeling. And also Matt was one of those people that had an incredible impression on my life. He was the first person that I met and became friends with that was openly gay. And not just openly gay, but unapologetically gay. And so I got to meet someone like that for the first time. And then after we did theater together, we just bonded, and he was almost 20 years older than me. than most of us. But to him, it wasn't about what age you were or whatever. It was like, are you just someone who's interesting and we're going to hang out and have a good time? And you're right. He wasn't a complainer. He wasn't someone who, when he was going through chemo, was going to constantly, complain about that. He was
In fact, he was the person who I remember when I got in there and he's like, well, JJ, how are you doing? Are you okay? How's it going for you? And I remember just thinking like, God, you are a genuinely amazing human being.
Yeah, it's hard when you're watching a decline because this person who a year prior was on stage singing, I've got video of the final bow that Matthew took on the Theater B stage, which none of us knew he was going to be gone a year or two after that. And then to get down to the point where a few days before his death, he's just sitting in this hospital bed. It was weird too. There were times where I thought I had said my last goodbye to Matthew, and then he would rally, and then he would be around for another few months. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful man, taught me and all of us who knew him a lot, and carry him with me still. I have this great photograph that Perry Rust took of me and Matthew that it has a place of distinction in my home. It hangs up high with photographs of beloved family members that have passed and things like that. And it always will. That photo of Matthew will be with me on my mantelpiece, hopefully, and I can explain to my grandkids who he was and what he meant. That's the kind of person he was.
So as we wrap this up, can I touch on something that is going to bring up some emotion? Why do you hate Captain Ron so much? When was the last time you sat and watched through the whole movie Captain Ron start to finish?
The truth, JJ, the dirty truth, and you know this. You're only asking me this question because you want me to show this in front of all people.
I want the listeners to hear.
I actually don't have anything against Captain Ron in particular. What happens, though, is that if I decide I want to win an argument, I'll fucking cut the legs out from underneath you if I need to. And at the same time, you have to admit you had an indefensible position. You were arguing that Lady in the Water was a really good movie. So it's not like that happened in a vacuum. It wasn't like I showed up and, hey, JJ, hey, thanks for giving me blood the other day. Fuck Captain Ron. It wasn't like that. But it was still wrong of me to throw that in your face. But now it's become a part of our relationship.
Yeah, become something that happens all the time. And I'll even admit this to you. My opinion on Lady in the Water has drastically changed since this first viewing. And I think because I was sort of in this lovely place where I wanted to just see more Paul Giamatti.
That must have been the lowest point in our Applebee's friendship.
Oh, without a doubt.
That argument happened at an Applebee's. I think I even remember the site of the restaurant we were on and what direction I was facing at the time. But you know what, JJ? What other movie could I have said there that would have rung... it was a low blow. I was saying you have low taste. But when you're arguing about something where the stakes are so low, hyperbole is the only place to go.
Right.
It's the only place to go.
My issue with it is this, is that Captain Ron is a movie that I have already had to defend to people for years, decades even. And for you to come at me with that, and that's what it is. You came at me with aggression and anger.
Because it had gotten to a fever pitch. The argument had nowhere else to go. At that point, I didn't just like, ugh.
You just needed to shut it down.
I just needed to hurt you. I needed to make
When was the last, have you ever watched Captain Ron the whole way through?
I think I have, but I can't remember. I have a vague memory of watching it at the lakes when I was a kid. But I couldn't tell you much. So
here's what happens. It's shots of the skyline.
I recently
of Chicago.
read the Wikipedia summary.
Shut up.
And
shut up.
It turns out he's a fraud anyways. He's probably not even a real captain.
He's not a fraud.
Probably not even a real captain.
Technically, anyone who drives a boat is a captain. They're captaining the boat.
Any kind of a boat?
Yeah.
You're in a rowboat?
Yeah.
I'm a captain of this boat.
You are. If you're captaining the boat, if you are in the verb of being a captain, to captain.
But if the boat is hitched up to a truck and you're just in a parking lot,
you're still
the captain of that boat. So the presence of water is unnecessary.
Do you know that I believe that if you're a captain, you can legally marry somebody? That's the power we've given captains, including Kurt Russell's Captain Ron?
Well, because there's captain when you were captain of a ship, and then there's captain, which is a military designation. And so I just think that throwing captain around willy-nilly really really devalues it, really takes away what it means to be a captain. Now, of course,
so it has to be a military thing.
I think it needs to be an earned title. Merely being in possession of a boat isn't enough, I think, to be captain.
So you're saying that if so what about like the Titanic, right? There's a captain of the Titanic. That wasn't a military vessel.
I'm not saying they have to be military. I'm saying it has to be
But
a title of distinction that is earned.
Every boat, every boat that's out in the water
by your logic,
needs a captain.
By your logic, Leonardo DiCaprio could have walked onto the Titanic and said, "Okay, I am the captain now."
No, at no point is he ever captaining the boat.
You just have to be on the boat. If that's all it requires, is you're on the boat.
Yeah,
is it like calling shotgun? Is it like, I call captain? I'm captain on the boat today. Or
like,
do you earn it?
I mean, in some cases you earn it, and sometimes you take it. So if what if Leonardo DiCaprio had captained the Titanic?
If you were the kind of captain,
and he told the owner, "Fuck you, I'm going to go the correct speed," the Titanic could still be making merry voyages today.
I think if you are a captain by military designation, you should be called captain. And if you're a captain because you fucking own a boat, you should be called captain. Captain.
Like Captain Crunch?
Captain Crunch.
Okay. So you're saying we should be calling him Captain Picard?
No, because that's
not military. It is not. No, it's a science vessel. It is a science vessel,
which is what the pacifist Picard says when he wants to be a pacifist. But Starfleet operates both as a science and military division, and they have torpedoes and stuff on there.
Yeah, for protection.
I mean, essentially, he follows the naval designation
for protection.
But you could still get it through military means. I mean, they act like a military.
Yeah, but Picard doesn't go through the military. Picard
goes through Starfleet.
I like microscopes.
He goes through Starfleet. He didn't become captain of the Enterprise because he liked microscopes.
That's why they gave it to him. They're like, "Who likes microscopes the best?" He raised his hand, and they're like, "You're the captain of the Enterprise."
They were like, "Riker, do you prefer microscopes or stethoscopes?" Stethoscope. Well, I guess you're first mate.
Crusher, the only reason they didn't even put her on there was she was a vet.
Well, one thing, did you know one thing about the medical officer is that in certain situations they outrank the captain.
Really?
They're the only member of the crew that can remove the captain from duty.
Really?
Yeah, I believe so.
Because like if they're insane or something like that.
Like if the
So who removes Picard when the Borg took his body?
Well, the Borg removed him because they spirit him off the Enterprise.
Right, but then if he were to walk back on, half Borg, half Picard.
Well, as soon as he was kidnapped, Riker takes over as the commander.
Right, but when the commander's back, do you have to relinquish
when the captain is back?
When the captain's back, do you have to relinquish in the Star Trek universe like your command back to the captain?
My understanding,
or does it remain?
My understanding of it was that you as the commander would still be in charge until the medical officer can sign off on the bill of health of the captain.
He's like, oh no, he's got USB ports all over his body now.
He is still Borged.
He's Borged up.
He's still all Borged up. So you're still going to be the captain. And I think there needs to be like, I wish my Uncle Paul was here because he could take us to school on how the protocol works on Star Trek. Because a captain can still order a medical officer to do something, but the medical officer, I think, can pull rank in certain moments when they have decided that, you know, this person is not fit to serve at the moment for whatever reason. I believe that's how that works.
So after hearing this discussion, listeners of JJ Meets World.
Also, you can't call a captain Cap because that's Captain America specifically. But he gets his through military.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, but at first, though, it's a theatrical name, right? Like the military didn't give him the captain designation, and so he returns with all those soldiers.
No one's going to cheer for Lieutenant America.
Well, some of the best characters in Next Generation were lieutenants. Geordi LaForge.
Well, really think that like you think he's the best, huh?
I love Geordi. Geordi is my favorite. Are you jacking off? Is that what's happening right now, or are you
No.
just bouncing your knee?
I'm bouncing. Well, I've got a pen in my
you
hand.
got the
Pencil.
pen. You're doing the rubber pencil
I got
thing.
pencil. I got a real David Letterman thing going on here with like.
I couldn't tell how bored you've been getting with me because you've been bouncing your knee so
No,
much.
I'm just trying to plot like how I'm gonna take you down. Anyway, join us on our next episode where we combine fan fiction of Captain Ron and Star Trek: The Next Generation, called The Ultimate Captain.
Before we go, though, I think we need to talk about the fact that we will be collaborating on a play again this year.
Oh yeah,
And that's a very important thing, I think, for us to cover.
So I was asked by Tucker if I would have an interest in the holiday show that Theater B's doing. And I said, well, what show is that? And he said, we're going to do the Santaland Diaries. I said, well, you're wrong because you guys have already done that. You've done it.
Mhm.
So, stop taking your goof pills. I said, no, we're going to mount it again. And this is the second time you've ever...
second time we've done it.
Okay.
Not
So-
the first time we've done a show twice, but yes, this is the second time we'll be doing Santaland.
And so I thought it sounds cool. It sounds fun. But the thing that really sold it for me was that Tucker was going to be directing it. This will be my third show at Theater B. The previous two shows, one of them directed by Pam Strait, and then the other one directed by Tucker Lucas.
The Underpants.
The Underpants by Steve Martin.
Yeah.
Based on a German play.
Yeah.
Dies Underpantsuns.
Well, Santaland is going to be awesome. It's a one-person show. The script is written by David Sedaris. It's essentially just a big David Sedaris monologue, but for a show about his time working at a Macy's Christmas elf. And so you'll get to see JJ on stage doing comedy. You'll get to see JJ on stage doing comedy dressed as a Macy's Christmas elf.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually have a lot of big plans for it that I don't want to go into because I want people to be surprised by it. But if you had seen it previously, it was the show starring Scott Horvick that we did. Gosh, that must have been 2006, maybe.
It's a long time.
Long time ago. But
I'm very
it's
excited
right.
for
It's
this
ripe for
opportunity.
reinterpretation. It's gonna be fun.
Especially nowadays, right?
Yes.
Where the Christmas holiday now spills into October.
It's also not a long show. It'll at max it's going to be 90 minutes.
Yeah, with intermission, right?
I don't know. We'll see because it just depends on what's happening. But the show is short enough that I think we can get away without it. But we'll just kind of see. We'll see what happens as we're working
It'll
on it.
depend on how engaging I am.
Depends on if you are milk babies JJ or if you're hand to God JJ. If you're hand to
okay.
God JJ, we're going to be fine. If you're milk babies JJ, we fucked.
Well, you had adapted yourself so much as a director.
But luckily,
And you're not writing the script for
luckily
it, too.
you don't have milk babies Tucker.
Yep.
You have the Moores Tucker.
Right.
Because I was the assistant director for the last show that Theater Beat did.
It's going to be a lot of fun. This show is insanely funny. And Scott Horvick brought a very unique take to it. I'm going to bring a unique take to it. Tucker's got plans, like you mentioned, that are just...
Excited for it.
It's going to be... Is it safe to say that from the second you walk into not only the theater, but the building, you're going to have a feeling?
I'll just say stay tuned at this point when
I
it
love
comes
it.
to that.
Okay. And we'll have more on that as we get close
Absolutely.
to it.
I have a feeling we're going to be doing some podcasts about the show.
Yeah. Especially because that's a lot for me to remember.
Mm-hmm.
And it usually takes 3 or 4 times for me to just get through our Patreon pitch.
Yep.
So more on that. Tucker, thank you very much for being my guest on JJ Meets World.
Thank you for having me. I think it's really great that you guys are doing this podcast, and I hope you guys keep at it. Well, thanks a lot, Tucker. I appreciate that.
Okay,
Thanks,
good.
Producer Tucker.
There you go. Producer Tucker, you've been so quiet this whole time. What have you been doing?
Well, I've just been reading in the corner here.
Oh, what are you reading?
Porn.
I like it. All right. I didn't even know that they still made that magazine.
JJ Meets World.
Well, that does it for this episode. Special thanks to my producer, Tucker Lucas, for coming on and having some fun with me. And hey, speaking of fun, you know what the best part of my week is, the most fun I have? It's loading up and seeing how many people have donated to our Patreon account. Patreon.com/JJ Meets World. It's the way we keep the lights on around this place. We like to have every single episode be free. We're never going to charge you for an episode, but the way that we do that is we ask you for some donations. So if we really made you laugh in this episode, or if we made you cry a little bit, or if you want to donate something in loving memory of your Uncle Harold, who really liked this podcast a lot, rest his soul, you can go to patreon.com/JJMeetsWorld, and you can set up a one-time donation or an ongoing donation. You really don't need that cup of coffee from Starbucks every day. In fact, it's slowly killing you if you were going to be honest. So why not take that $4 or $5 and donate it to us once a month? Hey, speaking of donating, a great way to find out about our Patreon site or check out previous episodes, just donate some of your time and love to JJ Meets World on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, wherever you consume the podcast that you love, and donate a review for us. We love reading your reviews. Shout out to the guy who gave us 5 stars on iTunes and said it sounds like a college a conversation he would have during college. That's exactly the kind of stuff we want to hear from you guys. Plus, you can also subscribe to us on any of those. Subscriptions help us convince folks like the people at MeUndies to probably get on board with our podcast, or at the very least, some subsidiary of MeUndies like Misaki's. If you want to find Tucker on the World Wide Web, you are going to go to moonbasemaria.com. You can see movies of me dressed up like a baby and all sorts of other great things. If you want to reach out to your host with the most, you can go to linebenders.com. All of my contact information is there. If you're looking for holiday entertainment, the Linebenders are currently available. I've got 6 keys on my key ring, and one of them will unlock a chastity belt, but I don't know which one's which, and I know that nothing kills the mood quite like, oh, hold on, let me try this one. Oh, hold on, let me try this other one. Let me try this one. So I'm going to just go around trying random locks until I can say, oh, these keys all work in a standard lock, until this one gets some nail polish, and that's how I'll know which one's which.